All right, that's that. Okay. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam, Hilchei Shmita, the Yovel prakim 6, 7, and 8, Shishi, Shvi, and Shmini. We are starting with Perek Shishi. Perek Shishi is all about selling produce that grows on Shemitah and how the Kedusha and the restrictions of those products go over to the money, and they also remain on the original products. As we'll learn, that will be the main thing. And many details of that, how Shemitah is not like Hegdish, that when you redeem Hegdish, you understand the Kedusha is transferred to the money, but the original Hegdish goes out almost completely L'chulin. By Shemitah, it doesn't work that way. This chapter has 15 halachas. We're going to first begin with halacha Aleph regarding the restrictions that come from the Kedusha that Perei Shvis is imbued with. Says the Rambam, Ein oisen zchoire b'Perei Shvis. We may not use the produce of Shemitah for commercial activity. Simple. Can't use it for commercial activity. Now, hold on. Does it mean that you can never sell it? Doesn't mean that. If you would like to sell a little bit, as we'll define the little bit, yes, moicher, aber, the money that you receive, they will be imbued with the Kedusha of Shemitah, which basically means that money will only be allowed to be used to buy food to be consumed, as was the Peiros Shvi'is. And not only that, that food that you buy will also be imbued with the Kedusha of Peiros Shvi'is, as we'll say. However, here's the chiddush. Normally, when something is holy, whenever it's redeemable, the act of redemption, taka, means that the Kedusha leaves the original and it goes into its substitute. Here, it goes into the money. And if you can use this money to buy new produce, that produce will be holy. But the original produce is also kadosh, remains holy. As we'll see in this chapter. Now hold on. Couple of details. Halacha base. A person should not reap. Loikeach doesn't mean to buy, Yakir. It means here you don't reap vegetables from the field in order to sell them. That is not allowed, even though it's a little bit. Similarly, don't charge a fee for dyeing with shells of the produce of Shemitah. That's called doing Zchaira b'Perei Shvis. So even though we said on halacha Aleph, you can sell a little bit, how do you get to that little bit? It's not that you harvested it in order to sell it, but what is allowed? That lokach yarkois lecho. You gathered, let's give an example, vegetables. You gathered it to eat. And now you don't need it. You changed your mind, or there's leftover. That's the pshat. Now, motalim karamoisa. But don't forget that when you do sell it, the damim that you receive is also imbued with shvis. If you gathered produce for yourself, and your son or daughter took it and they sold it, that's also okay. In other words, the nakuda is that you are not even allowed to harvest a little bit in order to sell it. But if you harvested it for you, you sold leftovers, or your kids don't know, they went into your cabinet. You guys, your children are young. Wait until you come to my grosso old age over here. So the kids are big. They come over. They take food. The zealot is laughing at me. I'm a chaya. So then they can sell it. And that's a good heads up for you kids. That's a good business, guys. Goes into your parents' pantry and empty out everything they buy in Glattmart and make a sale 50% off. And it's a good business, you understand, because the kids don't pay for anything. They get it for less, you understand? And the parents have nachas. Again, even that little that you could sell, you can't sell it mamish by midah, by measure, by mishkal, by weight, by minyan, by number. You can't sell it the way you normally sell products. We just had this word achsera. Achsera means by estimation. Lohidia, that it's hefker. And like we said, the money is imbued with kedusha shmita. The first thing you have to know is you can only use it to buy food. Halacha dalet. Another rule. If you bundle something as you bundle it to take it home, and now, like we mentioned, you decided there's leftover, your kid took it, they want to sell it, you can sell it in that bundle, but again, achsera, only by estimation. But remember, guys, when you take produce and you bundle it to sell it in the market, those bundles are more precise. That you may not do. Because in other words, when you do business, everything is bitzimtzum, everything is exact. You're selling X amount of money for a pound. You can't bundle it that way. Another din, some things that are only bundled if they're sold in the market. They're never bundled to take home. Then you can't bundle it at all. If someone brought produce from outside the Holy Land, why is that? No one knows where it came from. It shouldn't look like. But if it's clear that this product does not grow in the Holy Land, everyone knows that it's imported, importado. So then, mutter, you can sell it normally because there's no kedusha on it at all. And here, halacha vav. Now you see that there's something more chamur. It's amazing. By produce of Shemitah, even more than a hegdish. Shapoy des a hegdish. Whenever one could and is going to redeem hegdish, then the original hegdish yetzei kodesh l'chulin, and the kedusha goes into the money. The yotavsu adam tachtov aber b'hashviz ein kain ella hamoicher per shviz. What happens is in the conditions above, you can make a sale. Yotavsu hadamim, the money gets imbued with kedusha. And v'yayasu kiper shviz. But don't think that the original produce now is chulin. It is not. And that's the meaning of the word tihiyah. Chazal say tihiyah means b'haviyasa tihi lo'olam, that the produce will remain in its original state lo'olam, meaning even if it's redeemed. But it's also called kodesh. So it's not only that the original remains holy, it also shares its holiness. Now, 1 second. I want to add one nuance. There's one leniency. Like we mentioned, if you have paid a shvis, but you gathered for you apples, you don't need 10 apples, you have 2 left over. You can sell those 2. I paid for it $1. So the 2 apples that I get is still Shemitah. I cannot take it out of Israel. I have to eat it. I can only eat it until Shas HaBiyur. All of the rules go to it. Your dollar is also holy. Now, what happens if you take your dollar and you buy a orange with it? The orange is holy, but at least the dollar is now chulin. In other words, the original remains holy, and the last thing remains holy. The in-betweens, at least that. The final object purchased, right? Well, let's say receives the status of shvis. The original produce remains holy as it was, but if you go from one thing to the other, at least the guys in between, they are holy and then they are redeemed. For example, the Rambam wants to make it clear that it's only the achroin and the original. So then and you have to eat it, for example, that will be the topic of the next Pedic. When Shas HaBiyur comes, the original produce has to be removed from your house. The final product has to be removed from your house. But if you chose to take that piece of meat and to exchange it, either for money or for fish, now the basar is back to chulin, yatsa habasar, but the fish becomes holy. Lakach badogin, maybe the name shemen, maybe doggone, maybe it means grain, whatever it means. Doesn't make a difference what it is. And if you buy oil, so then yatsu dagin, then it's pashemen. Lakach pashemen abidam of dvash, yatsu shemen, then it is dvash. And now the honey is holy. But tzarich levaira peiros of the shoynois, always the original and the final one. Ima dvash o achroin, kederach shemavaram peiros shviz. Another rule: the ein oisen mishneyen, not from the original and not from the achroin. You can't make it into a melugma. You can't use it to make a compress. In other words, you can't use it litafua. That's another expression of kedusha. You can only use it to eat. V'loy mafsidin oison, you may not ruin it, as we'll see, as we learned in Perek Hey, Kisha Perek Shviz. Good. That's the you got the chapter.
Rabbi, refuah does not include pikuach nefesh, correct?
It does not include. That means if you're so hungry, or if you have of course not pikuach nefesh. Yeah, you're not going to allow a person to bleed to death. No, Perek Shviz, Perek Shviz. Another, when you make this exchange, which is not really an exchange because the original remains holy, it can only happen derech mekach, and not how? Not by making a declaration. You have to sell it. You have to sell it. How do you do it by hegdish? Just to know, guys. Many times by hegdish, you don't have to sell it. You just make a statement, yakid. The kedusha from this should go to that. It doesn't work that way. Now, when do you have to dafka sell it? Only when you are beginning with the pri rishon. But the moment, like we had in the previous halacha, you made many exchanges. Ava with pri sheni. Now both mischalal bein derech mekach and also through the normal process of a transfer. Bein derech chilul. Halacha 9. Gewaldig. Sagt der Rambam that when you're making this second exchange that you can do even by a declaration, don't do it on a living being. Because you might leave them into herds, because when you leave animals, they ultimately increase. And no need to say that you should never exchange the original payday into living herds, because people might end up using it inadvertently. Now, geshacht in a food is food, just because it came from like meat. Meat can never be shmita, original shmita, doesn't grow from the ground. But if you're mechalal it, derech mekach on meat, or if the second, once you are beginning with a peri sheni, you don't even need to do a mekach, you can do that on meat, as long as it's not something that will increase. Halacha yud, the mei shviz, another thing. The money that is now imbued with the kedusha of shmita cannot be used to pay down the debt. You can't use it as a wedding gift. Shushvinus was some sort of wedding gift, that if I give you a gift for your wedding, you are mechuyev to give me similar gifts when I get married. Or ve'ein mishalmin mehem tagmulin, any type of returned favor cannot be used for that. Cannot be used for a payback. And even more than that, you cannot in public say, I'm giving this for tzedakah and a beis hakneses. In other words, if someone made a vow in the shul already, someone already made a pledge, I'm giving $100. You can't use it to pay down that pledge. Even though it's tzedakah money, it's once you're mechuyev in something, you can't use that money to pay down a chiyuv. But if you're sending a new gift, yeah, because normally the pledges there was for aniyim.
Oh, okay.
This is an American thing that people pledge tzedakah for the upkeep of the Chabad house, and the rabbi is living a life like a paritz. That's and then it was laniyim.
Thank you.
But if you are initiating, in other words, the point is you can give a gift. Give a gift. You can give a gift without any expectation of return. It cannot be to pay down. It cannot be some sort of down payment. I'm giving you this, and you have to pay me back. But another detail, you have to notify the recipient that this is a Shemitah produce, because that person, like he says, this man beer will have to remove it. That person cannot use it for medicine. All of the restrictions will apply over here. Just like you don't buy living animals, don't buy avodim or karkois or behemoth tameo. But then you have to use its equivalent value as Shemitah. Yoichel connected. Mamish like we had on Ma'aser Shem. Another thing, because you owe that. Another din, the ain sachin, you can't use it to apply oil on utensils, on oirois, on hides, b'shemen shel shvius. That's not called eating it. The im sach, yoichal kenegdom. Halacha yudalev, ein noisten mehan, don't use this money for a labalon, to a bathhouse attendant. V'loy la sapor. Sapor means a ship sailor, you're paying your fee for you to get transferred. The Yakir is looking at me, no, I think. Sapon. No, I take that back.
A sapar is a barber.
A barber, shkoya. And a sapon is the sailor, or to any other professional. But you're not buying food with it. But if someone is a professional water schlepper, yeah, because you're buying the water. That's something else. In other words, you have to notify them. That's the pshat matnas chinim. So when the Rambam wrote Yakin Halacha Yud to aniyim, doesn't only mean dafka to aniyim. You can give it to someone as a gift. You can't do it in exchange of a service if it's not food. And that person has to know that the money is kadosh with peirush shmita. Halacha Yud beis hoimel apoil. A person tells the worker, "Hey, locha iser zeh, take this coin, v'laket li yara kayoim, and gather veggies for me." Then scharoi mutar, that is a permissible exchange. Now let me tell you something. You're paying the worker for his work. You're not paying for the vegetable. You're not paying for the vegetable. The is, and it's amazing how the money is exchanged for the work. The money is exchanged for the work, which is for food. And now the money becomes chulin. And now the person who did the work can spend the money whatever he wants. As we'll learn in the next halacha, hold on for that. But if the guy who has the money of Shemitah tells the worker, lakadli boy, for it, gather for it, vegetable today, that's mashma that the money is being exchanged for the vegetable. Then the money itself has still a din of the meishvis. The ein moitziei ella ba'achila u'shasiya kepeira ishvis.
Rabbi, can you repeat it? Because I'm mamish lost.
If the money is being exchanged for food, then the money remains holy b'dmei shvi'is.
Right.
And therefore, the person who did the work is limited with that money. If we view the money as payment for work, not for the vegetable, it's not an exchange for food, but it's for the work, then the kedusha leaves the money. Halacha yudalid halakeach min anachtoim kikar bepudyoin. A person is telling a baker, I agree to pay for your bread a pudyoin. Now, he didn't give him the money. Yakir. He took the bread and he told him, listen here, I'll pay you. Let me tell you how I'll pay you. That I'm going to gather vegetables and I'm going to give you the value of a pudyoin of vegetables. That's okay, because you are exchanging, Yakir, the vegetables for bread, but the bread becomes imbued with Kedusha Shviz. Makes sense? Chiddush here is that even though you didn't even have it gathered yet, if I make an exchange, food for food, I'm allowed. If I go to a baker and I get food, now I owe the baker money. I cannot go and pay down my debt. Gewaldig. See, that nuance is gewaldig. Halacha tezvav. Final halacha of this chapter. Oichlin paid shvius betoiva, and of course, vishaloi betoiva. In other words, I can't exchange it for a favor, but I can eat it with the expectation that he will return the favor. I'm not paying down a favor. For example, that I'm allowed to do. When I do a favor for you, very few people are very altruistic. If I give you a favor and I have in my mind a hope, I did you a favor today, I will cash in the favor tomorrow. That's okay.
But how is it acting as a favor if a poil is eating by?
No. Stam, not a poil. I'm stam giving you a gift. Because I cannot give it as a payback. But if I'm giving you it right now and I have a certain expectation that you're going to return the favor, that's okay. You'll give me a gift tomorrow, you'll allow me to go into your garden. The recipient of it eats it which is with all of the restrictions of Shemitah. So it's interesting, the only time that the produce of Shemitah, which always remains solely, but the money goes out l'chulin, if I somehow manage to give the money as payment for the work that a person does, which is connected to food, which will be okay. Okay, beautiful. Now we're going on to one of the main restrictions of Shemitah, and that is that little that you gather, ki'ilu min ha'hefker, it's not ki'ilu, it's min ha'hefker, that you can eat or you can sell the leftover. That is only if that type of produce is still available out there in the fields for the wild animals to eat. Once this type of produce is no longer available out there, I have to do biur in my home. We'll see how the Rambam understands biur. I know when it comes to Pesach, biur means to burn it. We'll see. Can you remove it? You can remove it. You can give it to people to eat today. If I know that today it's no longer available, I don't have to right away. I have today to get rid of it. So I can call in all of my chaverim and I can give everyone what they need for today, as we'll see inside. This chapter has 22 halachas, beginning with halacha al. Peiroi shviz, ein oichle mehem elo, kol zman she'oisa hamin matzui basodeh. Because every species is ruled or judged by itself. If this type is still out there in the field, I can eat the little that I gathered for me. And that's the pshat in the pasuk in Bahar, v'lebehemtecha, v'lachaya, asher ba'atzecha, tiya kol tfuasa le'echoil. So the Rambam calls man sha'chayo ichelos v'minazem and asadeh, because it's still there in the wild. Then ato oichel mima, that you gathered in your house. However, kol lachaya min asadeh, that's it. Then that's the mitzvah. You are obligated. Levayed. Levayed means here to remove. It can also mean to burn. You have to remove it from your house. And that's called biur, to destroy, to get rid of. Shalpedoi shvi is halacha beis. If you have dried figs, and the mile of dried figs is that it can stay dry for 2 years, for 3 years. Yeah, but you can only eat it if the figs are on the trees in the fields, which means that wild animals can chop some figs. That's it. What do you have to do? You have to be mavayir them. You have to remove them. Now, what does removing them mean? So here's the beauty. When it comes to chametz from Pesach, when it comes to the time that we have to burn it midrabanan, you got to get rid of it. But by the way, chametz from Pesach also, I can eat it. Here also, what happens is if I have a lot of produce, I have a lot of dried figs. If I have 1,000 dried figs, let me invite the whole Chabad Solar Shul. You have 400 or 500 people. Give everyone the figs and make a fabrengen on figs. As long as it's finished that day, you have that day. But after that day, no one can eat it. Not aniyim, not ashirim. Now, if on that day you have that so much, which by the way, you shouldn't have had so much because you're not allowed to gather so much to begin with, but you have that amount. Eat what you could, and the rest, you soy it. It doesn't have to be burning. or you can destroy it in any other way that you can destroy it. Halacha dalet, if you have raisins comes from grapes. Min haganois v'hapardesim shein hefker. And in the fields, in the gardens, in the orchards that are hefker on the year of Shemitah, it's no longer available. But if someone planted a vineyard in their chutzner, that even if those are still available, that's not good, because it has to be available for the chayes in the fields. You can't eat the raisins because you still have some grapes in the chutzner. No, because the ones in your chutzner,
we're not going to view a bird to be a chaya.
No, we're not going to view the chutzner as in a location where it's available. Chutzner is private property.
That's my point. It is available for a bird, for instance.
Okay, but we don't say that. That's the word. It's in a chutzner amishtameres. It has to be out in a place. And during the Shemitah year, even orchards were left open. Your chutzner was never left open, even on the Shemitah year, because you use your chutzner for your personal stuff. Now, if you have out there in the fields, anavim kashim b'yoytzev, very hard grapes, they only become fully mature at the end of the year. In other words, you have something that's not edible yet for people. Doesn't matter. It's still there. How beautiful is that?
When he is eating tzimukim b'shvilam, is there a cap of amount of how much he eats?
No, I'm just saying, Yakir, that to begin with, we learned before you can't gather mountains, but he gathered a lot. Now, if you have a type of a tree that is creating produce twice in a season, twice in a year, you harvested in your house from the first harvest. The first harvest finished, but this tree is going to give another yivul. You're still allowed to eat it. Because that min from the Shemitah year is found in the fields. But that's only if it's going to grow yakir on that year. Now there's something called peiros stav. Peiros stav is peiros that are mature in the fall. Now, these are not peiros that begin growing after Tishrei, but they begin growing at the end of the Jewish year, but they only become mature in the fall. That's not good. You can't say it's still available because it's only available on the 8th year. The word doimen is accurate because it does begin growing on the 7th year. When we say in halacha, hey, that if something gives produce twice, it's because it's going to give produce and it's going to be readied on the 7th year. Halacha vav. Now let's make things spicy. You are pickling, just as an example, 3 types of produce in one barrel. And from these 3 types, one of them, Yakir, is no longer available basada. So kol shekola mina min asada. It's a big kula this. All you need to do is take out that type from the barrel. But you know what? You can eat the other 2. When it comes to Isser Beheter, we don't say that. We say Noisam Tam that Tam Ke'ikr. We don't care about that. Yeah, you have to remove that type, but even though its Tam is still in there, you're good. He's Chilba, even more than that. If you finished the pickling process and you opened up the barrel, before this man habiyur. You know what's amazing? I'll tell you why. Because, again, there was no refrigeration then. Because items that are pickled, whenever they opened up the barrel, it had a very little shelf life. Since it's a little shelf life, we already view it that it's already mavur. Another rule, means if I have in my house stuff that to begin with is meant for animals, here also I can only give it to my animals if the chayes have it in the field. Now let's go back to the previous chapter. Means if I have money that I received in exchange of Peiroy Shemitah, I got this money because I sold the grapes. The moment the grapes are not available, I got to get rid of the money. Yeah, any food and drink that I want. But if and the nishar esem and adon shemach behem, I got to get rid of the money. Now the beauty here again is that if today the remoinim ended, I have today. Today I can use it for food, like we learned before. So so buy food, use all the money and to buy food, and macha fabrengen, and give it to people for all of the 3 meals today. How great! When do people eat 3 meals? When you're making a fabrengen. Oi, if you can't get rid of it that way, if you don't find eaters, halacha 9, halacha 10. Now the Rambam says something very important. We don't consider the whole Eretz Yisrael as one land for almost all products. For some, we consider the whole Eretz Yisrael one land. We consider Eretz Yisrael shalosh aratzos, 3 medinas. Imagine with 1 medina, what's going on? 3 medinas. And one is called Eretz Yehuda Kula, meaning both the Har and the Shvela, the mountainous portion, the plain area, the Emek, the valley area. It's called one region, but we're calling it 1 Medina. Eber HaYarden Kuloi, again, including the Shvelas Loid, the plains of Loid, Bahar Shvelas Loid, the mountains surrounding the plains of Loid, and Umi Beis Choden Adayom is called Eretz Achas, and Galil Kuloi, Galil Elyon, Galil Tachten, including Tiveria Eretz Achas. What does that mean? V'oichlin b'chol achas v'achas mishloshton ad sheyichlo ha'achlin shaba halacha yud. Meaning, Ketzad, hoyle peres v'Eretz Yehuda. I live. You harvested grapes in Eretz Yehuda. Listen, let me say by heart. If in Eretz Yehuda there are no more grapes available to the Chayas, even though you have grapes in Galil, it's not good. You can eat it only until only kozman sheyesh moisamin b'chol Eretz Yehuda kula. Now, I don't say, oh, I got grapes from the mountainous area of Yehuda. The grapes are available in the fields only in the Shvela. That's still good because that's considered one. Again, interesting stuff that Rambam changes the Seder. Right? In Halacha Tes, he goes Yehuda, Ever HaYarden, and Galil, and here he goes, and it's Yehuda, Galil, and Ever HaYarden. Halacha Yud Aleph. But what Yehuda is always the first. But there are certain products for which we consider all 3 medinas 1 medina, and that is interestingly for cheruvim, for carob, for zaysim, for olives, and for dates. In other words, if I harvest the dates from anywhere of these 3, as long as in anywhere else of these 3, basada, it's available, I can eat it. The Soyad is a place that's renowned for its dates, so it would last there the longest out there. The now people don't know when that is, so the Rambam is giving you a zman. So even though you don't know, you should know it's Purim. That's the zman that we can assume that you have until Atzeres, somewhere in any of the 3 medinas, out there, Zaysim, Pesach, but not Pesach of the 7th year. Shomatzoi Shviz. Wow. And Ubagroig it is. At Chanukah. Beautiful. Okay. Now, I am in Yehuda. In Kol Eretz Yehuda, there's no more grapes. Let's just say that as an example. But I schlepped my grapes of Shemitah. I went to the Galil. Now what? Or in the other direction. And I went Lamakim Shekalu. In both cases, we're Machber. Chayv Levayr. Lefishan Loisten, all of Chumrei Makim Sheyatza Misham. Chumrei Makim Shehalach Lisham. Furthermore, peiris aretz sheyatza l'chutz la'aretz, which by the way, it's asur. You're not allowed to do that. The din is misbarem b'mekoymam. That means you don't have to bring it back to Eretz Yisrael. When that product, ba'aretz, is no longer available, destroy it where you are. Don't transport it from one place to the other. And just to make it clear, really, you're not allowed to take it to begin with. Halacha Yud Gimel. Now here goes the great klal. Klal amru b'shviz. This is the very general principle. Kol shu ma'oichel adam or ma'oichel behema or mimin hatsoivim, something that's used for dyeing. Im einoy miskayim ba'aretz, meaning if it won't be maintained in the earth, you'll understand this in a moment. Then yesh lo shvi'is, uladam of shvi'is, and v'chayev b'biur v'yesh ladam of biur, which are all of the rules that we learned until now. For example, alei haluf, leaves of a wild onion, aluf hashoyte, va'alei hadan dena, leaves of mints, the ha'ulshan and endives, we consider them all oichelada. Or ukegoin hachoichim b'hadar dorim, brambles and thorns are considered ma'oichel behema. Ukegoin estes, wood, the koitza, soul flour, is considered the min hatsoivim. Now, what are we getting at Chay's halkop? The ib hoya miskayim ba'aretz. I'm sorry, these are items that are not going to be kept fresh, Yakir, by putting it in the ground. Okay, now the imoy miskayim ba'aretz, other products that Rambam is going to give that were used for dyeing, that they are maintained a lot longer. You're going hapua, matter, v'harichpa, dyers, rocket, miminat soivim. If it was from the 7th year, and if you harvested it and you sold a little bit of it, uladam of shviz, eloy biur. There's never a zman biur, you understand? And therefore, the money that you got for it, if you got money for it, will also not be bound by biur, because sharei miskayim ba'aretz. In other words, here's the word yakir. Anything that will be continuously available for animals, certain things are always available. Then there's no din of biur. It's not that it's not holy, it's considered food, or it's considered something that's used for dyeing. So it's bound by the laws of Shemitah. Only things that are not this kind of ba'aretz, like normal fruits, once it's mature, just because it's connected to the tree, it's not going to remain forever. Other things are lachatchila, not food. That's why the Rambam is finding things that are miskayim ba'aretz, but they're still bound by the laws of Shemitah. However, Allah yudalat, but the chol she'ena meyuchad l'maychal adam, nor l'maychal behem, the eina mimin atzoivim. So what do people use it for generally? For fuel. It's also not used for fuel. I want to say like this, guys. Laws of Shemitah don't apply to that which is used for fuel. That's why we kept on learning about trees. You cut trees. Anything that's fuel is not bound by Shemitah. But if something is not Meichel Adam, not Meichel Behem, not used for dyeing, but not fuel, yesh loy shvi'is, that's a big cloud. Ulodam of shvi'is. But here also, aval ein loy biur, v'loy lodam of biur. At least that leniency. Afal pi she'enem eskayim ba'aretz. So that's the three things. But something that's Meichel Adam, Meichel Behem, minat soivim, and if it's not miskayim ba'aretz, that's the whole vart of biur. Go find out if it's available. The Rambam says, I know there are certain things that will always be available. Say them. But the Chiddush here has halacha yudalet. That here, even though it's not miskayim ba'aretz, it's lenient. You'll never have to remove it. Why? Because it's not Meichel Adam, not Meichel Behemel, not Minat Seivim, and not Neid La'etzim. Not Neid La'etzim is on the other side, because, and like we mentioned, the laws of Shemitah do not apply to fuel. What's an example of that? Not the leaves of a luf hashoita, the roots of wild onions. They're not used for food. The iker and damdeno, the roots of mint. Some sort of herb that looks like a scorpion. Have kedusha shmita. They don't last forever, but you're not bound. There's no zman biur. Why is there no Zman Biur? The Torah says only I know, because it's not Oichel, not Oichel Adam, not Oichel Behema, not Minsrevim. Beautiful. Halachat as well. The peels of a rimon and the buds of a pomegranate, also the klipe agoizim shells of nuts, hagar inim and seeds. The yesh lahem shviz, they are bound by shmita and lahem shviz. Avalei lahem lahem biur. Great examples that I get, because guys, it's not Michael Adam, it's not Michael Behem, it's not Minat Soivim. Here's the akid. You don't use it for fuel. It's seeds. Lul veizeradim vecheruvim, the tips of the branches of grapes, and charuvim yesh lahem shviz, v'lahem shviz, yesh lahem biur. But here, yes, there is a din of biur. Lul veha the tips of a branch of a evergreen oak, the habatna, and of a pistachio tree, v'atodim, and boxthorn bush, yesh lahem l'mem shvius, ve'ein lahem l'mem biur. We're lenient. Aval la'olam shalahem, the stama dear olam were eaten by animals. So then yesh lahem biur. Halachat zayin, ezu shas biur ha'olam. Okay, so let's go to those items that the leaves are bound by beard. When will that be? So we say whenever they wither and fall. In other words, when you have leaves on the ground, Yakir, out there in the field, it doesn't count. Once they fell off the trees themselves, they're garnished. That means it's not available. Ale zaysim, the leaves of an olive tree, ba'ale konim, ba'ale cheruvim, ein lahem biur. They're used for, let's say, for animals, because they never fully wither and fall. They are always available. Till when can you harvest? In other words, what do we want to know? What is asavim used for, guys? It's Michael Behem. So it's bound zman abir. So until when can I do it? We already had this before. You have these bitter apples that become naturally completely dried out. When that time comes, the animals will no longer eat from those grasses. So therefore you can't gather it. You are allowed to gather dried grasses until the second rains fall in the next year, because by then the asavim in the fields of the first year are no longer available. Another question. All of the produce that grows on Shemitah, dinar kehefker. Now those products, it's not like Rosh Hashanah comes for the 8th year, you lock up your fields. You can't do that, because whatever is there grew on the Shemitah year. Same concept until the second rains comes. Then already you lock up your fields. Halacha yutas. Haveret, roses, v'hakoifer, cloves.
Second rain is around what? Mar Cheshvan?
No, we learned this in Tainus, in Mar Cheshvan. The question of Machloik is Pashat Hanoi. Correct. Somewhere at the end of Mar Cheshvan. Or the Shchodesh Kislev. I forgot there are different sheetas when we consider the second rain. Halacha yutas. Haveret, a rose, v'hakoifer, cloves. V'haloitim, chestnuts. Yeshlam shviz, or the name shviz, because it's bona fide. It's amazing. Roses, who eats roses? Mustama animals eat roses. Haktov is sap, balsam sap. Which is a leniency. It's garnished. But sap that leaves, that flows from berries, who yesh shviz, ulodam of shviz. But if you have a tree that doesn't produce anything, even the sap that flows from the leaves or the sap that flows from the ikorim is kapri sholahem. It's amazing. It's amazing. In other words, when do we say that ktof ein lo shviz? I'll tell you why, Yakir. Because the tree has fruits. So we don't say the sap is its fruit. A tree, it's amazing, that has no fruits, it's a barren tree. If it has sap, we say the sap is its fruit. L'chumra. The yesh l'shviz and l'dam of shviz. with everything. In other words, we also go to Zman Abiyur. Allah Chafala, we're city people. We don't understand. People used to use everything for everything. These are all examples just to break down the klal that the Rambam began in Halacha 13. Now that we said that roses are bound to the dinam of Shemitah, so hakoyvish vetted, people would pickle roses. Can you figure? Hakoyvish vetted shvius, but you pickled it, you soaked it in oil of the 6th year.
Even
and
today,
now,
even today, people using roses water for baking cakes, for instance.
So Yakir knows. What do I know? Okay, good. Now here the thing is that you soaked it in oil of the 6th year, and now the Zman Biur came, or you don't want to have to treat it b'kedusha shviz. So all you need to do is yelaket haveret. Once you remove the rose, the oil, even though the oil has the tam of the vered, it will remain completely mutar. Very similar to what we learned before. If you're pickling 3 things together, when you take out one, the one that is man abiyur, the other 2 are good. We don't care about the tam. Now, another thing, if you have the vered of the 7th year that was pickled or soaked, b'shem and shomot soy shviz, here we say, chayv levad Hashem. Aha. I take it back. In other words, when you pickled the vered of shvius b'shem and shishis, during the time of the pickling, the rose was still allowed to be consumed. So if you remove it, you can always have the oil. But if you took the vered and you put it in the oil of the 7th year, that means when you put the vered in there, it was already after Zman HaBiur. Once you began the process after Zman HaBiur, removing it won't help.
Oh.
And the final halacha chav beis, charuvim shal shviz, carobs of shviz, shekavashon, that they were soaked biyayin shishis, oy biyayin shamatzoy shviis. In both cases, chayv levad hayayin. Chayv levad hayayin. Why should they come pay the shvius boy? Now I don't know why by the pickling before was different. And zehaklau pay the shvius. Should a server pay the sachedois? Min b'minoi. You have got a problem. B'chol shu.
But how is it different, Rabbi?
I don't know. B'shaloi b'minoi, only b'nois and tam. In other words, when something gives a tam, it affects everything else. The exception is by that case of the pickling 3 products together in halacha vav. Okay, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you that, like we learned before, by pickling, we said that the moment you open up the barrel, since the whole thing does not last for a long time, it's as if you did biur. That was the word.
Oh.
Okay, good. That was the word. That's why it's different. Okay, so there is a concept of tam. Okay, we stand corrected. Chavra, moving on to today's final chapter, Perek Shmini of Hilcha Shemitah v'Yovel. Now we're going on to a new topic. There are people that were chashud al hashvis. They did not restrict themselves to only harvesting what they need to eat, and if they're going to sell it, they're only going to. And b'chal, people that, God forbid, they were working the land. So how do you interact with a person that's chashud al hashvis? This chapter has 20 halachas. Halacha Aleph Zok the Rambam, Kederech she'asur la'avod ha'aretz b'shviz, just like we are not allowed to work the land, the Reisa, the Rabbanans, etc. Kach asur lechazek yidei Yisrael she'oivdim oisa. If you have a yid that, God forbid, is not yet there, he's working the land, you can't help him, nor can you sell to him klei avoda, farming tools. Why? Because of the rule of Fisha asur lechazek yidei oivdim aveda, forbidden to strengthen the hands of transgressors. Now, halacha beis ve'elu kelim she'ein ha'umen l'shoy l'machram hashvis l'mishu chashad b'shvis, because the following utensils are used exclusively to work the land: a macharesha, a plow, v'chol keleh, and all the accessories of a plow, ha'oil, a yoke, Bahamizra, right, the winnowing fork, Bahadeker, and the merak. All of these tools that are farming tools, again, they're used exclusively to farm. Zaklal, kol shemalachtim miyuchedes lemalacha shusur b'shvis. You can't be moida heter. You can't say maybe the guy's going to use it in a good way. No, it's only used to farm the land. Also lemachrei to someone who's chashuv. However, any type of tool that has dual function, but it's possible that it's muteres. Here you can even sell it to a chashud, for example. You are allowed to sell a magal, I'm allowed to harvest a little bit yakir for me to eat. And for that, I would use a sickle. Or a wagon. I'm transporting a small amount of fruit to my son. Because she'im yiksar boy ma'at, and you only load up the wagon ma'at, you will learn that's mutter. Even though if you're going to harvest it the way it's done, or if you're going to bring coal, we're not putting our heads in the sound. The line is that if it's possible for it to be used, even though the guy's chashud, you are allowed to sell it. Even if something that's miyuchedes, and why? Because maybe this guy's buying it for next year. A potter. Now, when we learned before, guys, about the amounts of product that you are allowed to keep for yourself. So a potter, it's beautiful, can sell chamish kadei shemen. Guys, this is Perek Dalet, because I am allowed to have that amount from the olives of Shemitah. A potter is allowed to sell 15 kadei yain. That's the shir yakir of what we learned in Perek Dalet. Umutar limka l'goy, even more than that, because the goy is not bound by it. And what's the chiddush? Ve'eno choishish shamiyim kol Yisrael. Next case, umoicher kadim rabam liyisrael hachoshed b'chutz la'aretz, because chutz la'aretz is not bound by the laws of Shemitah. What's the chiddush? Ve'eno choishish shamayavi la'aretz. Halacha vav. Umoicher lo choshed paruch chideshes. I can sell a cow that was trained to plow. You can even to a choshed. One second. It's not a utensil because a cow can also be geschachten. That's called dual purpose. Why? Because people can leave the land fallow. Many people, like we mentioned, leave the land fallow for a year for it to grow better next year. Because no one leaves the trees fallow. In other words, this guy's a choshed. He's going to violate. He's going to harvest the fruits, not the produce of this year. Another din, umashila, you can lend him a measure, a saw, the measuring cup itself. You can lend him that. Limdoidba, afapishu yadesh like doiden. Why? Because it could be maybe the guy has in his house old grain. Another din, you can exchange money for him, even though you know that he has workers. And again, you're not allowed to hire workers to work on your field with Shemitah because you don't know. Maybe the guy owes money from last season. And in all of these cases, if the buyer, the chashud, is telling you, befedish, I'm going to be using whatever to do something that you may not do, then it's also. A woman can loan to her chaverto, who's nebach chashud ala shviz, a sifter, a nafa, a kavara seed, right? A chayim, a mill, a tanner, an oven. You cannot work with her. And don't forget, chevre, that I can have a sifter. In other words, like we keep on mentioning, if I harvested the permitted amount, I can, even on Shemitah, I can use it. I know my neighbor is going to have quantities that are not mutter. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. As long as I don't do it with her. You can give words of encouragement, but only words of encouragement to a guy. For example, when you see a guy that's chodesh or shadeh, which is completely allowed to do, I can tell him to schazeh or tatzliach. Because what may I not do with the guy? I cannot help him. Even though the guy is doing the iked. Another din, I am allowed. Now, guys, here, Many people say, Yakir, the guy caught a branch of the tree. The guy caught a branch of a tree. Now the detached branch is filled with fruits. That I can help him take off. Another din. V'choichrin mehen niden. Niden, we had this expression before. I can make a sharecropping agreement regarding a land that was already partially broken in on the 7th year. Because the guy broke it in, the guy. Now that since now I can go ahead and I can, if I did nir, what did we learn with the concert him? You can't use that field on the 8th year, but the guy did it. Lefisha ain't been a chiv kadei liknus oisam as we learned above. Halacha nine. Umuter lasis batolush basuri. I'm allowed to work with produce that was already harvested in Surya, but I cannot work b'mechubar. For example, I am allowed to be dash.
What's the chiddush here? Surya is not Eretz Yisrael.
No. Hala Perek Daled. We learned in Perek Daled that the Chachamim made an isur of avodas hakarka b'Surya. But
right.
now that's only midrabanan. So now that this yid chashul, he already did the isur. Now I'm getting a job. What am I doing? I'm being dash. Dash means I'm threshing. I'm threshing produce that was already detached. The zoydin I can winnow, v'dorchen I can squeeze. I can make sheaves. I cannot harvest grain. Simple. Halacha yud. Sagt der Rambam, as we learned in the previous chapter, as we learned 2 chapters ago, right. Oh, I'm not allowed to store them. That was the previous chapter. I have to make sure that with this manabir, I get rid of it. And I'll tell you why. Because we learned, that was the whole word, that when you exchange, when you give money, the original remains holy, the money remains holy. So because he might use that money without giving it the proper kedusha shvi'is status, which it has. Don't forget that it's going to be transferred to the money. Now, guys, lulav is part of the tree. Remember that. We had this in the mission. So the lulav is not a problem. Problem is the esek. So either noisily esek matana, or remember your mavliya. That resolves the issue of doing schayre b'peirishvis. And then the money won't have any kedusha because you gave the esek as a gift. The money was only for the lulav. That you're not allowed to buy produce from Amma Aretz. You're not allowed to buy because the money you're giving him will also have kedusha shvi'is. That's only bisman shoya moichet peidas kisheka moisem bashamur. Produce that's normally protected is what he's selling, like te'enim, figs, rimonim, chayisim. Avla moichet peidas shechaz mehefker, which is pegam, ru, hayar buzin, amaranaf, hashoitim. Most Ross. I have no idea what this is, and Kevin is not here. Because of it is coriander. We're very lenient. And that is only to allow the guy to make a living. In other words, if you're giving a guy a little bit of money, the main thing is
type of off.
We are confident that this product that you bought from this Am Ha'aretz is not something that he will keep himself forever. He won't do that. He doesn't need to do that. Very good. Halacha Yud Gimel. Chen davar she'einoi chai b'maisres, anything that's already not food. To the point, it's not chai b'maisres. For example, shum bal bechi. Shum is good, but bal bechi means shum that makes you cry. Shum that's very strong is halachically not even chayv to be tied. Ubatzol shal richba must have been onions that were too hard to eat, too heavy, too stark. Ugerisin hakil kiyois, peeled Sicilian beans, hostel, and adoshim from the Egyptians over there. The chain zaroinegina b'chlal, seeds of plants that are not eaten, like zaralefes, the seeds of a turnip, the seeds of a tzinoin, b'chayotze b'hen, harei elu mulkachem b'choladam b'shvius. Because guys, if it's not halachically called food, which means it doesn't have to be tithe. So we are a lot more lenient when it comes to these that are abundant. You can't even buy it off the Amoritz. We're more lenient. then you can be lenient by these products. But aval mishu chashad lasis chayim b'peiros shvius, or you know that he's going to be shomer these peiros and he's going to sell them ein loichem and davar that has even any type of zika shvius klal. The ein loichem menu pishton. You imagine you don't even buy from him flax. Now flax, what's the flax? Even if it's already saruk, because there's flax seeds, guys. Flax seeds, epis is Michael. But if it's already tavi b'shazud, if it's spun and twisted, that's mamash nothing. Then it's not Michael at all. So we say it isn't zika shvius. Then you can buy it off. Halacha tezvav. Hachashad ala maislis. We say eno chashad ala shvius. Hachashad ala shvius, eno chashad ala maislis. Even though zevazem and atoyna, but they're different. So maiser has to have avos makam. Just as an example, we're speaking about maiser sheni. So it could be Yakir, the guy doesn't keep Meiser Sheni because he's not going to be bothered to go to Yerushalayim. But Shemitah, he'll keep. And Shvita, maybe a guy doesn't keep Shemitah because it doesn't have pidyon. That was the whole thing that we learned. That even after you sell it, the money is still Kaddish. Ha'achran, the last one is holy. That's why the guy, Nebach, he says, I'm not going to keep it. But Meiser is not so chamur. You can't presume that his weakness in one will be weakness for all. Halacha to Zayin, similarly, if a person is chashud ala taharos, which is a terrible thing, a person is suspect that items that are tamei, he sells and he lies and he says it's tar. Terrible thing. So he's chashud on that. Eino chashud ala ma'aseh ala shvius. Why? Because you know the dinim. If I eat impure foods, even though midarabanan, guys, I become tummy on a certain level, as we'll learn. But midarais, I don't become tummy. And therefore, really, a chashad al atada is someone who's chashad not to keep the rabbinics. Chashad livrei seifrim, ain't a chashad livrei Torah. Allah yud zayin kol chashad al adavar afal pi she'einu neman al atzmai. But he will be neman al achedim, because there's a rule: chazake ain't adam chayta, only la achedim. Lefikach, if someone is chashad al davar, he's allowed to be the judge. He's allowed to be a witness. Wow. Halacha yud ches. Hakoyhanim b'chlal were chashudim al hashvitz. Why were they chashudim al hashviyas, guys? Because they say to themselves, guys, don't forget, that which grows on Shemitah, Sfichem, we learned is only Yasir Midrabanan. So they're might have it. And therefore, Sa Truma, Shenafla Lemeya Social Peda Shvi'is. Now, what's the din of ratio, Yakir? That Truma becomes nullified in the ratio of 1 in 100 as long as Tala, you have to remove the saw. So you're good. Your good means, since you don't have to give it to a kohen, take out the soft truma, and that's the din, and now you can eat the rest as chulin, but as chulin shviz, and you'll keep shviz. But if it's less than 100, so the only solution would be to give it to a kohen. You're not allowed to give it to a kohen. You're not allowed to sell it to a kohen, because the kohen is suspect not to keep these dinim, and therefore you can walk oil. Because the chshudim ala shviz. Wow. Allah yutes. Hatzaboyim, painters, vapatamin, cattle raisers, loichin mursan, mikol mokim, can buy the brand from any source, and they don't have to be chayish that it is from Svichei Shvi'is. Now, just to make one thing clear, they're not allowed to buy it from someone who's chashud. You remember in halacha yudalit, they can buy it from a person's stam. The final halacha, gaboy kupa shvi'is. Right? There are people that would collect, remember that? There would be food banks, they would go around and they would collect food to give it to the poor people. They should not say, I'm not going to go to those people. Take it from everyone. Tzedakah, take from everyone. Because when people give tzedakah, they might give moy shvi'is, but other than that, you're good. And the final din, I just want to throw out something out that people should remember. There's an issa because of ribis of saw b'saw. People will remember. But the saw b'saw, if I have that produce myself, I can borrow. That must be the case. So I can borrow from the aniyim peidah shvis. Again, ribis saw b'saw, I have that amount, and I can give them back peidas. B'shana shmin is to be continued.